If your donor list lives in someone else's agent, it isn't your donor list. I want to say that plainly before the sector spends 2 years discovering it the expensive way. A nonprofit's donor relationship is the only asset it compounds over decades. The building changes, the executive director changes, the program mix changes, and the thing that carries the organization through all of it is a file of people who already said yes once and can be asked again. That file is quietly moving into vendor infrastructure. Here is what actually happened. On July 30th, FundraiseUp announced what it calls Agentic Giving, a category in which a donor's AI assistant discovers a nonprofit, compares it against others, and completes or proposes the gift on the donor's behalf. The same day, Charity Engine launched a voice-driven agentic fundraising platform that executes campaign launches and record updates inside the system rather than answering questions about it. Blackbaud's development agent for autonomous donor cultivation has been generally available since March. That is a wave, not one vendor's pitch. Read that first one again, because the important part is not the technology. A system that discovers, evaluates, compares, and transacts is doing the most consequential thing anyone does in fundraising. It decides which organization gets the money and how that organization is described in the moment the decision gets made. That is not a donate button with a nicer interface. That is the introduction, the case statement, and the ask, all running inside a layer you do not own and cannot see into. Now hold that next to what the sector asked for 5 weeks earlier. In June, the National Council of Nonprofits published principles for ethical online fundraising platforms, requiring written authorization before a platform solicits donations or uses a nonprofit's name and branding. More than 50 state and regional associations endorse them. The 4 principles are consent, transparency, partnership, and accountability. An agent that picks you and speaks for you is doing precisely the thing that list says needs your signature, and nobody has asked for one. Nobody steals the relationship. It leaves one convenience at a time. The platform holds the payment, so it holds the identity. It holds the identity, so it holds the consent record. It holds the consent, so it holds the contact permission. Its agent writes the thank you, so it holds the tone of the relationship. 3 years later, the nonprofit has a dashboard and the platform has a donor. Every step of that was reasonable on the day somebody approved it. So be specific about what a donor record actually is, because people say donor data and picture a name and an email address. It is the giving history and what each gift was really for. It is the consent and the channel permissions. It is the stewardship context, who made the introduction, what they care about, what they asked you never to do, which board member takes them to coffee. That last category is the part that never gets exported because it never got written down anywhere but the agent's memory. Which is why I would call this a memory problem rather than a vendor problem. If the context only lives inside the platform's agent, leaving is not a migration. It is amnesia. You get a spreadsheet of transactions and you lose the reasons. And the reasons are the entire thing. Rebuilding 20 years of stewardship context from a CSV export is not a project anybody funds. So in practice, nobody leaves, which is roughly the point of designing it that way. So here is what I would actually do. And none of it is exotic. Keep the system of record on your side of the line in something you control and can export tomorrow. Let the platform be a channel that sinks into it, not the place where the truth lives. The direction of that sync is the whole decision. If your CRM is downstream of the fundraising platform, the platform owns you. If the platform is downstream of your record, it is a tool you can replace. Second, get the representation language in writing before you turn anything on. Not a data processing addendum, which you probably already have. A plain answer to how this agent describes my organization, what it is allowed to say we do, whether it is allowed to compare us against another nonprofit, and what we get to see about how we were presented. If the vendor cannot answer that in writing, that is the answer. Third, and this is the one I would not bend on, hardgate the things you cannot undo. Money moving is one. How you are described to a donor is the other, and that second one gets treated as cosmetic when it is not. A wrong dollar amount is embarrassing and fixable. A major donor who was told something untrue about your program is a relationship you may not get back, and you will usually find out about it a year late or not at all. Everything else can loosen as the tool earns it. Draft the appeal, segment the list, summarize the call, write the first pass of the thank you note, flag the lapsed donor nobody noticed. That is genuinely good work, and it is where the time actually comes back. The gate belongs on the two things that leave the building, and the rest should be getting less supervision every quarter, not the same amount forever. I want to be fair about the other side of this because the tooling is not the villain. A 3-person development shop is never going to hand build any of it, and the gap between what a small nonprofit can do and what a large one can do has been embarrassing for a long time. If an agent drafts the appeals and catches the lapsed donors, that shop gets capability it could not otherwise afford. My argument is not don't use this. My argument is about who holds the record while you use it. Those are two different questions, and they get answered as one, usually by whoever configured the integration on a Thursday afternoon with no idea they were making a 20-year decision. Nobody in that meeting is arguing for handing over the donor relationship. It just happens because owning your own record is work and the default is free. So ask the question now, while it is still cheap to answer. If your fundraising platform disappeared next quarter, what would you still have? If the answer is a list of names and amounts, you do not own the relationship, you rent it. Own the record, sync outward, put the representation language in writing, and keep a person on the two things you cannot take back. Everything else can be an agent.